my name is Woody. This is Change in the House of Pods, a podcast about Deftones, and I am very excited to share this conversation. Sonny Mayugba goes about as far back with Deftones as one can go. In Sacramento music lore, you would know him as the guitarist from Phallucy, but he grew up with Deftones since high school, and he remains close to them to this day. And today, you might know him as Violet's dad. That is Violet, the guitarist from Destroy Boys, another band you might be familiar with. And if you're not, you better ask somebody. Destroy Boys have played at Dia de los Deftones and a whole lot more. You're going to learn all about the family tree in this conversation, and that really is what this conversation is about. I mean, you're going to hear me use the word community, but it's really family. And I feel very fortunate to have been on the receiving end of this family's generosity. And hearing Sonny describe where it comes from is pretty damn cool. This is one of the good ones. This is Sonny Mayugba on Change in the House of Pods.
Phallucy was this crazy, interesting band in Sacramento, California in the, I guess, 90s, but really it started in the late 80s. So Phallucy, how did it start? I grew up in Sacramento on a street in Tahoe Park. And my best friend at the time lived across the street from me, this guy, Dave. And I grew up playing guitar. My mom was a musician. She was a blues bassist. And so I was around music my whole life. Music is my first love, my first passion, and still to this day, my passion. And so, yeah, I wanted to be Angus Young, man. I wanted to be Randy Rhoads. I wanted to be a guitar hero before the game. And so I played guitar a lot, and I wanted to start a band. It was, starting little bands here and there. And what was crazy was my buddy Dave Garcia, who lived across the street. Part of this I'll tell a bit looking back. I didn't know this at the time, but he's this genius artist. He would just sit on his couch at his mom and dad's house, and he had this crazy family, man. His dad was a forklift driver, and his mom stayed home and smoked cigarettes. He had like brothers and sisters that were always fighting, just one of those crazy pads like that. And he was the baby of the family, and he would just write these songs. He was a songwriter, man. And they were great songs. Like, just picture sort of Elvis Costello meets like Ozzy or something. It was like, this guy is a good songwriter. And a big influence on Chino, speaking of like, Deftones. Like, I know Chino like really digs some of Dave's style. And so anyway, I used to love hanging out with Dave and him playing songs. And I was, a big like classic rock and metalhead, writing riffs and guitar stuff. And so I wanted to start a band, and I ran into this guy at, I want to say an Exploited show or a Slayer show or something at the El Dorado Saloon. This is how long ago this was. El Dorado Saloon is a club here in Sac that held like 250 people. Like Slayer played there, like, bands that could never play there ever again. Megadeth and COC, all these bands would play there. And I ran into this dude there who had on like the skinhead gear, the suspenders and the flight jacket, if you remember that era. But he also had long hair. Now, this is an important point because I was like a long-haired rocker, and I'm sure my Deftones buddies who are watching this or listening to this are going to be laughing because they're going to say white leather jacket. I used to wear a white leather jacket. And so I was a rocker, but I loved, like, I was like a pioneer in the crossover era. Like, I loved classic rock. I loved classical. I liked punk. I really loved punk. I loved just all kinds of music. And that wasn't common those days. You were either like a rocker or a mod or a punk or, or new wave, if you remember that. I mean, it was very, very different. And so I see this guy and I'm like, wait, you're dressed like a skinhead, but you have like Metallica hair. What's up? So, in those days, this is pre-cell phone, right? You just roll up to someone and go, hey, what's up, man? Hey, what's up? Hey, do you like this band? You like that band? Yeah. Oh, you like this band? Oh, cool. His name was Rob Armstrong. And so Rob, he goes, yeah, I play bass. I go, dude, I play guitar. Let's start a band. So he had a 3-string bass. And his parents would let us jam in his bedroom. And then he goes, I know this drummer guy. And I go, dude, I know this singer guy. And that's how Phallucy was born. He knew this drummer guy named Joe Senda, who turned out to be this insane drummer. And I knew Dave, and I asked Dave, and Dave was really introverted and pretty shy, and he's kind of anti rock star. Like he's like, I don't want to be in a band, that's lame. But he would write these great songs. I'm like, dude, you got to be in this band. And I'm like the total sales guy, right? Like, you got to be in this band. And so he finally comes to a practice, and we were jamming, like, I don't know, playing covers and stuff. And he came and just started, and that those four people were the start of Phallucy, this like local high school band. And we got a gig. You know, we were all in Tahoe Park, and which is like back in those days, like a little bit. It was not, you know, it's a blue collar neighborhood, you know, like on the fringe of the hood and kind of all that area. And so we got this gig at this like pretty rough gangster party on Franklin Boulevard, and people in Sackville listening will know Franklin. Like it is, it's kind of where Abe grew up. And it's like it's a hood, right? But it was like we played 3 sets of rock at this crazy party, dude, and it was just awesome. And we're like, we got a gig. You know, you think it's the best thing in the world, like playing in the muddy backyard to all these drunk like thugs. Um, and yeah, and so we just said, cool, we're a band. Let's keep going.
I love that you called it the like the start of the crossover era, because that's been a common theme, and obviously that has really been a defining characteristic of Deftones is their you know, many influences. But I love that that is one of the first things that you touch on, because it is so important to point out that that hadn't really happened. Like people weren't, especially to like there were so many different new and exciting genres of music, and then they started to blend. Like
No,
that
seriously.
was
So I'll give you an example. And this is, I think, something that Deftones dudes always loved. Like we would play, you know, every band back then played some covers because you would play parties. There, you know, it wasn't like today where you just went on TikTok. Like you had to play parties to get a following, right? And then you maybe got a club gig. So to play a party, you couldn't just go up there and play 8 songs. Like you had to play for like 3 hours. So you played a lot of covers. And plus we were all young music lovers. We wanted to play covers. And Fallacy would do like our own songs, right? Which was, I guess you'd call it alternative or whatever you call it. But we would do a Cream cover, right? So like Eric Clapton and Cream. But then we would do like Septic Death. But then we would play like a really obscure Cure song. And then we would play like, you know, just in, you know, and it was cool. It was music that we loved, right? And you know, we blended all those influences, ended up creating what Fallacy was, which, as you said, like if you look at Deftones, I mean, especially Deftones, like Stefan's like chunkiest, raddest metal riffs with like Chino getting emo on singing and then screaming, and like all that blend came out of this whole crossover scene, which was, you know, in Sacramento was born at that era.
so it was you guys sort of at the forefront, or at least in my understanding and knowledge of the Sacramento music scene. And we're talking again late 80s, early 90s. What was the maybe what was the
Yeah.
Fallacy run? What
It
was
was like Fallacy started, I think 87, 88, right around in there. And Chino and I have a joke about 88. He's like, dude, 88 was the best year of your life, bro. Funny. And so we started right around there, 87, 88, and I don't know, broke up around 91, 92, something like that. So, which, you know, at that space of linear time in that stage of your life is like a couple lifetimes actually.
yeah.
And yeah, that we were like the new kids in SAC that became sort of the pioneers in another way. So I'll give you an example of what I mean. Like we were post like Tesla, Cause and Effect. Oh gosh, there's another band that had a bunch of hits here. There was like these bands that came out of Sacramento. I mean, Tesla is still one of the best-selling rock bands in rock history
I'm
over.
still playing Tesla on the
Oh,
radio.
Tesla's
Yeah.
dope. Yeah, it's so
Yeah.
rad. Like, and they're still playing, by the way, but they were like this phenom out of there. And you know, and they were like in the early 80s, right? And they were pretty strict, like that whole kind of LA rock, but they were so Sacto. And we were these new kids playing these underground parties, mixing punk and classical and rock and classic rock and all these different things, right? And emo, whatever. And so, and it was all that same time, like Steph and I are the same age, so we used to hang at like my first house I ever lived in, which is kind of called the Phallus Palace, was the name of it. The Fallacy House was like this hut. Me and Dave lived there. Yeah. For the band, guys. It was named that for the band.
Oh,
The Phallus Palace in South Sac, Ninth Avenue. A lot of funny stuff there. But that's where like, if Juan, right? Juan, who was like Deftones PA forever. Juan,
yes.
Juan's my homie. We're the same age, and Stefan, and we all grew up together, went to high schools together, hung in the same neighborhoods. And so this house was kind of one of the first houses where, you remember everyone lived at their mom and dad, right? And
Yeah.
so some of us, six of us got together and got a house, like six people it took to get a house. And it became the band house, and bands practiced there. And Steph rode his bike over with pizzas all the time, and people would come over, and it was this cool place. And that was the same time like Deftones were getting going and starting, and then like all these other tons of bands in that era were coming out, and there was this really amazing movement in Sacramento that really got fueled by a few guys, Tom Bray, Jerry Perry, Brian McKenna, and this guy John, that started the Cattle Club. You probably know about that. And they let these goofy bands from South Sac play and open for these bigger bands, and you could play on Thursday night and sell your own tickets, and they really changed the trajectory of the music scene here for a lot of people.
But there had to be players. And for you guys to have all found each other and congregated at this place, and I mean, it almost feels like a collective in some sense. It's pretty, it's rare, right? That's a special. I mean, I don't know how
Yeah, yeah,
music communities are different, as sort of you alluded to. You had to go to places and play, but then you were also like, I feel like in these days, creation can often happen just, from entirely different parts of the world. I'm in my room making my stuff, but you were at a house, the Phallus Palace. That's
that was
fantastic. I keep picturing like this giant,
yeah,
column or
yeah.
something. Anyway,
There were no effigies of male genitalia, just FYI. There were not. I mean, there
not
were
that there's
things.
anything wrong with that, but yeah.
Yeah.
But that's like so special. That's so singular. And for like the stars to have aligned, for the times to have aligned. And then okay, so uh help me understand maybe some of the relationships then. So you guys all sort of went to school together or different schools together. Can you help break down some of your relationships with the guys in Deftones?
Sure.
Or at
Uh,
least the beginning of
yeah,
the relationships.
yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. And I want to make a comment about what you just said a minute ago as well.
Yeah.
I'm glad you recognize that because I reflect back on it as well, and it's interesting to watch people today and trying to connect, and we have more technology and devices and means to connect with people, and it feels harder for some people, I've noticed.
Mm.
And I know it's just changed, and I love all the new tech, but what's interesting is that moment, you're right. There was probably a lot of serendipity and magic happening of all of us being in one place at one time. But at the same time, we had this sort of drive to want to create something, and it would drive you to just go up to strange people and just say, "Hey, do you want to hang out? Do you play music?" You would just ask people who looked like a certain way. Like in those days, how you dressed defined you, right? So you'd be like, and I mean that in a good way, like, "Oh, this guy must like this type of music because he has that type of shirt on." Like
Mhm.
no one liked Metallica in 1985. He has a Metallica shirt. How the hell does he know Metallica? No one likes Metallica. So you just walk up to that person and go, "Hey, you like Metallica? Me too. What's your favorite song off of Red Lightning? Oh, okay, you're awesome." So we created a community physically,
Yeah.
and then that became this hub. And you're right, that house became a collective or a hub or whatever you want to call it. And I think it's really cool. And I've seen really interesting examples of that recently. I finally went to Meow Wolf in Santa Fe. And if you haven't been,
Mm.
Robert, I feel free to edit this crap out, but like Meow Wolf is really interesting. And there's a documentary on it you should watch that is a modern day version of that, where these young artists weren't accepted in the old, Southwestern Native American art, rivers and skies. They wanted to make this cool wild art. And so they got together and ended up it's a long story, but they ended up like getting this bowling alley and like turning it into this immersive art gallery, like as a collective. And that's kind of what we were. It was just people. Like I'll give you an example. We were all going to City College, and I rolled up to this guy who had long hair, and I'm like, "Hey, what's up, man?" We started meeting. He's like, "I need a place to live. I just moved from Santa Cruz." We're like, "Cool, you can live at our house. We need a roommate." And he moved in. And this guy turned out to be really crazy, by the way, like, like throwing knives in the floor and chasing people with bats. Like but he
Oh,
was
wow.
cool. Like he never did anything bad to us, but he was just like, that's what you did back then. You're just like, oh, cool. You have long hair. You want to live with us? Great. Let's live together. So anyway, this house, yeah, became this hub, and people would borrow gear from there. Like Stefan would come over and borrow gear for a gig, or people would bring gear over there. We had
Wow.
we had this weird garage, and like Juan's band would practice there, and we had other bands practicing there, and then of course we had parties and the whole thing. It was really neat. And so yeah, so that's that. Your question was like, what's the inception of meeting the Deftones guys? So here's how it goes for me in my perspective. So I was in freshman year of high school, and I had this friend named, and I'm going to put Juan in the Deftones camp just because he's been Deftones family forever. But
Yeah.
um, because this is before I started Phallucy. I took a guitar class in school. They had a guitar class at school, right? And I had this neighborhood friend, this guy named Clint, and we were both into like Ingve, Randy Rhoads, like
Players, a lot of notes.
players, dude.
Yeah.
Like, Ozzy, just like Brad Gillis, like all that. And Clint especially, he'd like perm his hair. We were moosing our hair and shit like that. And I wore a white leather jacket, just truth be told. And in guitar class, I sat behind these two guys. It was this guy, Donald Best, and this other dude named Juan Gonzalez, who, if anybody knows Deftones, knows Juan. And those dudes were just into like, Slayer and Exodus and Mordred, just like like all the early like super metal bands. I don't know if Mordred was around back then, but you get what I'm saying. And during guitar class, you're doing the bing, 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 whatever. And then the teacher goes away and says, go practice. And then we're all trying to play our own, riff. So here's Clint and I trying to play like leads from, Ozzy songs and all these complicated chords from Yngwie. And these guys are playing like, Metallica riffs, right? Like, E, F, G, E, F, G. And they're just like, calling us jackoffs or whatever. And then Clint just one day just like gives them like one of those, psh, look at that 3-chord metal, just like talking shit. Like we just instantly were talking shit to each other, which is really nerdy guitar stuff. Anyway, we all became friends. Turns out Juan was best friends with Rob, who was the bass player of Phallucy. So we all became friends, and we became this band. And Stefan was just always around. Steph was homies with Juan and Rob. These are just all South Sac kids. And there was this other band in Sac called FMK, which was this very, very genius, maybe the only genius guitar player I've ever been that close to, Mike Farrell, who was like, he was like a guy you would see and go, I think I should quit right now. Like he was that phenomenal. And, all these guys grew up in this, we all kind of grew up from Tahoe Park to Fruit Ridge Avenue or whatever. And so, yeah, we just all, it was kind of a weird rarity back then to have a band or have long hair. It was like, or have a mohawk or have tattoos. Like you were considered a loser. And so we were all doing all those things, and it just attracted all of us. And that's how I met Steph and of course Juan, and we would all hang out. And then I ended up going to multiple high schools. We'll leave that story right there. Um, and uh, and then Chino, Chino's younger. He was at McClatchy, so I'd see him around. And he was a Phallucy fan, and he was this young guy, and he would come to some of our shows. And as the band started, Phallucy, like every band, starts changing members. We had a falling out with our drummer Joe, and there was this kid that we all had seen that was just phenomenal, and he was playing in Deftones. His name was Abe Cunningham. And he was this young little skinny kid, and he was like this super Phallucy fan. He loved the music. And so we were like, I hope people still do this these days. We're like, we're doing tryouts, like Phallucy's looking for a drummer. So the word gets around school, and he like secretly tried out or something. I can't totally remember the story, but anyway, Abe ended up joining Phallucy. Crazy side story. Turns out, my mom and Abe's mom were friends when they were like late teens, early 20s. Yeah, like yeah, because they were part of the 60s, and in band, my father was a musician and Abe's dad was a musician. So they all hung in the same scene. So it turns out like Abe and I were at like a lot of parties together as babies, and we've always felt a very deep connection and been very, very best friends. And to this day, we live across the street from each other. Um, and and so he joined Phallucy, and so I kind of I'll say re-met him. And then and that's when it was like, okay, Phallucy, Deftones, and FMK, and these are these bands, and frankly, we were all kind of trading members, because then this guy Dominic joined. I think he might have been playing bass, might have been before Chi, but he was in Deftones for a bit, and then he ended up taking the drums. He's a multi-instrumentalist, and he joined on drums for Deftones, and then we were like expanded Phallucy, and he joined us as bass. So then we look like the guys who were like taking the not good, taking members from Deftones. So we were like friends slash rivals, even though I totally
Poaching
talked
all, yeah, poaching everybody in
coaching.
Deftones.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then
That's
Steph asked me, like, dude, you want to join Deftones? It was just like that back then. You just joined different bands. And so yeah, so we all just kind of met organically through those different ways. And then you hung out, you went to the same parties, you went to shows. That's where you saw everybody was at shows back then. Yeah.
I think it's first of all, it's really enlightening and clarifying to get a better sense of, because this as the story goes, oh, Abe left Deftones, went to Phallucy, went back to Deftones, and there isn't really much more to it. But understanding now that you guys were really sort of a community and not so much, I don't know, like factions or camps. You were really just like, and
Oh yeah.
I don't know why I didn't think about Dominic that in the same way because I knew he was in both bands.
Yeah.
Um, but
Yeah, and it was like I think it was just, and it wasn't like it really wasn't poaching. Like I think these days people are probably just more sophisticated and more savvy. I know my kids are like they grow up faster. There's so much more information at an earlier age, right?
Mm,
So you can be a little more cunning and like, I'm going to poach this person or I'm going to do this. For us back then, it was really, really fluid and very much just driven by a lot of instinct and passion. And I really mean that because, yeah, we were looking for a drummer and we thought Abe was the greatest, but he just wanted to join and we wanted him. And it just kind of worked out. It wasn't like we were just targeting someone. And sure, we did secret practices and just make sure it worked out and all that kind of stuff. But, it really wasn't. People were jumping around in lots of different bands and sitting in, and Cake was getting started, and Willhaven and Far, and I mean, all these bands that all became big things. I'm leaving out a few, I'm sure, but like, there's all these bands that ended up Papa Roach, that's right, and Shorty, and all these bands that kind of like spilled out of that. And a lot of those members moved around. So it was a pretty cool scene. It was a lot of people here would say, oh, it's the next Seattle because it had a lot of the same characteristics. We never became like as big as a Seattle, but in terms of like notoriety of bands, but it was very similar, like from a Green River to Mother Love Bone to, a lot of those
mhm.
bands, they played with each other because you just loved music and you liked playing with people.
Totally, totally.
Yeah.
And it's really fun to think too, like you're teenagers. You're literally
Oh, dude.
teenagers in your early 20s. You're just kids trying
Yeah,
to figure it out and have fun and like that's
literally.
there's no there I'm sure there was probably a little bit of competition but certainly no malice or anything like that, no malicious intent and something like that. But as kids continue to discover Deftones and learn their story, it's I think important to maybe point out some of those things and fun. It's really fun to think about
So fun.
these dudes cutting their teeth, all of you guys cutting your teeth, learning from each other, taking from each other. I just think all of that is so great. Do you have a favorite Fallacy gig?
That's a good question. A favorite. Gosh, that's crazy. I don't know that I have a single favorite. But I mean, there might be one that I'm thinking of right now, but I will say that one, but there's a few that are also worth mentioning because it's hard. I mean, a favorite gig for any musician is like, I don't know, probably asking some, person who like performs on Broadway or an actor, like, what's your favorite play you ever? It's like, they're all different. There's like different favorites, right?
Yeah.
So, but when you ask that question, what comes to mind is there was this early gig where there was a band here in Sacramento called Kai, and these guys were like Led Zeppelin meets Soundgarden meets Led Zeppelin again. I mean, they were just monsters. Everyone loved them. They were like the fastest growing band in SAC ever. And, the lore of like, 100 what do you call it? Offers of signing and, record company offers, all that whole thing, man. It's nuts. Great guys too, great band. I ended up playing a lot with them as well. And they were, as we were the new kids at one point, they became the new kids and got bigger than us, right? Just like it as how it happens, right? And at one point, Phallucy and Kai were like the two biggest bands in SAC. So to your comment earlier, every musician to this day, you're always competitive, dude. It's just the nature of the game, but it's different type of competitive. Like you don't want your friend to lose. You just want to win, right? You want to make sure, you want to be the biggest band or be a band or whatever. And so especially in those young days when you're a local, like you're scrapping for every little fan you can get, right? So at one point, Phallucy and Kai, who were very different types of music, were like the biggest bands. Like Kai was actually a bit bigger at this point. And so Cattle Club, we used to do the New Year's Eve show, which was like the biggest honor in SAC. And Phallucy would headline New Year's Eve. Well, this one year comes and it's like, what are we gonna do? So Jerry Perry says, we're gonna do a Phallucy and Kai New Year's Eve, which turned out to be like one of the raddest gigs ever, because here are these two like local heroes. Like these are two bands, actually funny enough, two bands that never even made it. They were kind of the Almost Famous movie, right? Like really big local, like everyone's like, oh my God, you're going to be a rock star. And both bands ended up breaking up. Well, we end up playing the same show. And it was like, whoever opened, I can't remember, but like Phallucy played and then Kai played. Great sets, packed club bursting at the seams. But then we did this thing where we actually combined our gear and both bands played at the same time. And we played like, trying to remember what we played. We played, I think, One Way Out by Allman Brothers, and two drummers like Neil and Abe, and just four guitars or five guitars, and two singers, two basses. It's a really nerdy thing to say is your favorite, but dude, it was an amazing moment. I remember that. It was like very loud and very cool, and it went really well, and everyone got along. It was super awesome. So that's like a favorite, but I'll give you a few other highlights that were amazing. We opened for Smashing Pumpkins, which is this kind of legendary show in SAC that was just insane. And
That's so crazy.
We're pretty certain Billy like picked up something we did. We used to do this feedback intro with dual guitars that ends up on a song like an album or two later, which is fine. That's what artists do.
But show up, but at least shout us out, right? Like,
yeah, shout us out, bro.
Show some
now,
love.
I don't expect Billy Corgan to shout us out. You know that. But there's another weird one too. Like one of my personal favorites was, so like I was telling you about crossover, like, I was into punk in 5th grade, which no one was into. But I also, by like 6th grade, I got really into rap. Like I loved Run DMC, LL Cool J. I liked rap. I liked hip hop early. And dude, we got to open for Run DMC. And yeah, at a club when they were like touring clubs, if you remember that era. Remember that year rap died when like Beastie Boys were playing clubs, Paul's Boutique era. And Run DMC was playing this club called the Boardwalk, like probably 300 people, 400 people. And probably only 200 showed, and we got to open right before them. So opening for Run DMC was a big favorite. We did some shows up in Humboldt that were kind of standout favorite, opening for Primus, and then probably like equal to that Kai one of my ultimate favorites. Like I'm a big worshiper of Rob Cavastani, Death Angel, and I begged my way when they were playing here. I mean, I begged this guy forever, and I finally got on the show from the promoter, and we got to open for Death Angel. That was like amazing,
That rules.
Like the best moment of your life at the time.
What an eclectic mix of shows like that. Like talk about
Right.
the crossover era, like that right there. Every one of those points to
Yeah.
wow,
Yeah. And that was that
wow.
year, right? We'd play with Psychofunkapus, and then you end up playing with like some crazy metal band. And yeah, that's how it was. I mean, think about it this way. People think of this as normal now, but that was prior to Lollapalooza being founded.
Mm,
Lollapalooza really was the first festival that said, it was really the festival that went, wait, we're going to have Henry Rollins and we're going to have this like acoustic band. Or, I can't remember who's on that first year, but it was like Ice-T. Remember? Oh, it was like
yeah,
Ice-T and Body Count, but then we're going to have the Breeders. Like
yeah,
that never happened. Like
yeah.
promoters and like music industry didn't think that way. You had your categories: rock, pop,
Hmm.
hip hop,
Yeah,
and Paris
radio is
never.
still very much lost and stuck in that lane. Yeah,
It
unfortunately.
is.
But yeah, that's again, that's just so central to who I identify Deftones as. And
Yeah,
it's
Deftones were not were I mean are, but definitely back then, like really soaking in, like, Abe would play like Cat Stevens and then like Too Short. Like think about that for a second. But to us, that was very normal. And like, Chino the same. Like he was one of the first guys I met who was like some of my other friends at McClatchy High School, was really heavy into like new wave and English artists. And to this day, I know he loves Smiths and Morrissey and Spaceman 3. I mean, these bands that like nobody was listening to, especially certainly not rock bands, right? And I remember like, I mean, I used to hate early Pantera, but like Steph loved Pantera. So think about that. You got a guitarist who loves like early Pantera, and that was some like rock shit. And then you've got like a singer who's really into these like English ballads. I mean, that's a really cool blend. And it took a minute to like cook that pot of stew, right? But it happened, man.
do you remember? Well, actually, before I get to, because I want to ask you, like, from your perspective and watching their trajectory and how that sort of looked from your vantage point. But before I get to that, I should ask you about Abe as a drummer because you were in a band with him, and I'm really curious, like, what it was that you identified in him as a musician. What do you see? What do you identify? What strengths does he possess? What is it that you think makes him so special?
Good question. Really appreciate that question. I'd say first off, it's the person he is. And I mean that sincerely. Like, I mean, look, Abe can get hot-headed, bro. Trust me.
Word? Really?
Don't be surprised.
Oh, I'm sure he does, but it's not very well
No, no,
documented.
only among us homies. And I say that with love. But what I was really leaning into is, your reaction is spot on, because you'd be hard pressed to find someone who isn't shocked at how much humility and grace that dude has. Like it's a trip. Abe's a really neat, special person. And he's always been that way, dude. He's really a hippie, and we're both kind of deep down inside raised by hippie moms, right? And
Mm.
he's this very, very deep, soulful dude. Um, and that's where it starts. So like recognizing that, and like you're like hanging out with this guy, you're like, this dude's fucking cool. And it's, when you're 17, that's not what it's like. You're like a bunch of piss and vinegar, and
Yeah.
you're trying to prove yourself, and you're acting cool and whatever. And it was just this really neat guy. He's very authentic. So I'd say that. And then when you play with him, and especially as a guitarist, um, playing with a good drummer is incredible, but playing with a genius drummer is like truly inspirational, really, really inspirational. And that happened right away. Like you play with Abe, and you're like, oh my goodness, this is good. Like he gets it. He's filling in the spots and doing things I never thought of. And then, as guitarists, right? First off, there's a good guitar joke. We all think we can play drums, which we can't, but we pretend we can do. And so we do a lot of singing. No, here I want it to do this. And then you stop, and then you hit this one thing, and then you choke the cymbal, and then do this. Okay, can you do that? It's easy, right? A lot of that. well, this guy will just do it. And then he would take what you're doing and say, that's stupid, and then do it better. And you're like, whoa. And it's been rad to see him just evolve. Like, Abe was in the 90s, so a lot of fluttery, like a lot of that stuff going on, a lot of that Primus tight snare and a lot of that. And then, when they got signed and he started working with more talent and production, and then you saw that like beast start to come out and like so that those two things combining, and now and I've jammed with Abe many, many times over the years, and it's crazy. He's played with my daughter's band and all kinds of stuff. And he's my favorite drummer. And there's only a couple other drummers that I liken as much. Like, what's his name? The Soundgarden drummer. I love that dude. Matt Cameron, I think his name is. Is that right?
Mhm.
Matt Cameron? Yeah, that
Yeah,
dude's
yeah.
like, he to me is like, okay, it's like Matt Cameron, Abe in my mind. I'm just subjective, I'm not judging, just my subjective look at it, and maybe one or two. But yeah, he makes songs so much better. That's hard for a drummer to do.
Yeah. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
something I feel like that has been reaffirmed in these conversations that I've had throughout the course of this podcast, and it really comes down to Abe is an amazing, amazing talent, like an
Yeah.
technical uh, instinct. Um,
Soul too, but soul. That's the thing. You got technical, then you got your like kind of soulful, like sloppy drummers, like technical as hell and listens, but then crazy deep soul. That's just a unique combination, man.
yeah, there's no pocket. Nobody like that dude should start his own line of jeans because he's got the pocket. Like that is
Let's go.
it's it's like it's not, and it's always been so crucial and to my enjoyment of the songs. And like another discovery that I've made along the way is like with Saturday Night Wrist, he's dialed back a lot. Like there isn't as much Abe really throughout the course of the album, like rocking it and making you like bob your head. And so like that album didn't hit as much for me out the gate. Like
Yeah,
I really had to grow into that one. Whereas, like my own summer is just give me like, oh, I'm
please,
I'm
please.
I'm in it
Right.
now. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it's really cool. That's really cool. I love that. So uh how did he manage to go back to Deftones? How did that work from Phallucy and he goes back to Deftones? He's like, well, they need me, or they're how did it work out? Do you recall?
Yeah, no, I remember definitely. So, Fallacy had its arc, and the band started writing really interesting music, and there was some good things, but was getting fractured internally. It's the most probably cliche story ever. A couple camps in the band that it was kind of fracturing, and one of the biggest fractures was between me and Dave, the two sort of main songwriters and or personalities in the band. And we had another songwriter in the band, and so like his name was Josh. And so Josh and Dave were kind of going one direction, and then me and Dominic and Abe were kind of leaning the other direction. I was sort of like vacillating in the middle. Um, and it got really serious, to be frank. It's kind of the only word I can think of here, that which is kind of silly as you look back on it. You're like, oh my gosh, why are you guys so you're just a local band with like nothing? And we started getting really, really serious about practice and notes and these things, just all that. And bands do this all the time. Like you're kind of in your own way is really what it is.
Mm.
And the shows started getting a little more intense, but then like our following was falling off, and so like less people were going, you know what I mean? And but we were like, oh, the band is just genius. Like these songs we're writing are amazing. And so we were kind of drinking our own Kool-Aid, sort of. It was really a weird time. And basically the best way to describe it is like it just wasn't that fun. And so at the time, I think, Deftones were cycling through drummers, and, Abe and Chino would skate or hang out, and he was just hanging out. And they called him up one time. We're like, hey, man, just fill in for us or do a show or do a practice or something like that. And Abe went and was like a joy. I remember him coming back and telling me, because we were just hella close. He was just honest with me. He's like, dude, it was fun. Like this Phallucy shit is not fun anymore.
Word.
And Deftones were so much fun. Like we're talking smack and we're like joking around and rocking hard and messing up and laughing. And, Phallucy was getting to the point where like if you'd mess up in practice, like people were getting mad and like acting like James Brown or something stupid like that, right? And so yeah, that just happened once or twice or three times. And then he just kind of finally said, dudes, like I'm kind of over the Phallucy and I'm gonna go join Deftones full time.
Word.
Yeah,
Wow.
that was cool. And then Phallucy kind of just, and then I think he left, and then maybe Dom or I left, and I went off and I did Heckler. I did the snowboard magazine thing, and then it kind of fell apart.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Did you ever imagine that you'd be talking with me about Phallucy, or that Phallucy would have the legacy that it has? I mean, because it does. I know I mean, you guys did a reunion show, maybe a decade ago or so. I'm sure if you live across the street from Abe, you still, I mean, all of the things, the
Oh,
relationships are still there.
oh, the Phallucy jokes, and I know you had Todd on the pod. Like, you should
Yeah.
get some Phallucy jokes with Todd. Like, we can just go on and on and on, and we like rivet, like stick the knife in hard, dude. It's amazing.
Word.
So, I mean, yeah, look, as a young guitarist, I always imagined that, Fallacy would be this big, beautiful piece of work with this big thing happening. But I did not imagine it would end up carving the chasm that it did. And it's interesting and it's really cool. And what's rad, like you talk about that reunion, like, yeah, we've done a couple reunion shows, and it was really like really Chino and Abe that like sort of revived it. They were like, Abe was like, dude, that album never came out. Let's put it out. And Chino was always like referencing Phallucy as an influence in the interviews, and so was Abe, and people started asking about it, which was very, very cool. And so, as you look back at, the moments of your life and you think about the work, the body of work you've created and the effect it's had on others, it's pretty cool to look at and think like, wow, like in all seriousness, again, we joke and talk shit about Phallucy so hard, but like, it's neat to know that it had some influence. Like there's certain drum riffs in certain songs, like Abe will be like, see that piece, right? I go, I know where that's from. And like, it's a beautiful thing, man. It's awesome. And it's killer to see that it was maybe one piece of inspiration that led to this freaking legacy of Deftones. Like, look at this thing. It's like this resurgence happening. And I mean, I went to a show with them the other day, and there's 15-year-olds there. Like, dude, this isn't just a bunch of old 50-year-old dudes. Like, these are young kids into it. Like, my kids are like all into it just naturally. It's so amazing.
So what do you, apart from the songs and the music, because we've had some conversation about it. I'm very interested, and it's sort of interesting to think about too. Like, so you go on to do Heckler, and then you have, I think, probably like 11, 12 different startups. Like
Totally.
you coinciding with their, 10, almost 11 albums, over these. So you guys continued to ascend and do greater things. But I know you have to look over at them and have an understanding and get some sort of, what it takes to make a successful business work. What is it about these guys, this relationship, the dynamic, or how do they how are they putting this together and continuing to draw, new 15-year-olds to
Yeah.
who are going to be lifelong fans, who are going to have
Yeah. Oh yeah.
it's
Yeah. It's
it's
crazy.
it's it is.
I mean, look, it starts with like you talk about startups or any business, it all comes down to people and the product they make. So, I never would ever call music product, but people do. But like they're talented, man. This music is just really good. Like it's, some songs you like, sometimes some songs you might not like, but like it's good and the performances are spectacular. So you start there, right? Like these are people who are super authentic, doing what they should be doing and creating great stuff. Um, but beyond that, there is this incredible determination and commitment that is required in this industry. Whether it's, the music industry or movies or athletics, it's not for the faint at heart. And being so close to the guys, like they've gone through a lot personally, and professionally, like just a lot of, like we all have in life, right? This isn't secluded to just musicians. Like you go through a lot of stuff. It's maybe a little more pronounced because, a music career and being on the road is tougher on just the rest of your life in some ways. And so having that conviction and commitment and determination, like a Shaq or a Kobe or the Barry Bonds, like you're going to do this. Like I'm doing this. This is what I'm doing. And there'll be high times and low times, but I'm going to stay with it. That's like a big piece of it, just like showing up. Those guys always show up. There's breaks, there's fights, there's normal stuff, but it's sticking with it and commitment, man, not quitting. Because it'd be much easier to just quit, right? Like, screw you, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
So you combine those things, and then you put good people and good team around them, and then suddenly it's 30 years go by.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The fact that they're that authenticity is really central to who they are as a band has only become relatively sort of
I guess it's only been seen recently, and it's funny because I've seen it forever, especially in the 90s era when it was like Deftones were big. They were signed to Maverick. That was like a hot label, Madonna's label, and I think Guy Oseary or whatever. But then like all these other, like, I guess you call them rap rock now, all these other bands came and they were like bigger and, flashier and drawing more people and dressing certain ways and doing certain things. And like Deftones never did that. They just stayed who they were. Like,
yeah.
like Abe and I have a joke, like cut off Dickies, dude. That's just what you rock. Like, and it's just funny. But here's what's funny. Look back at all those bands, you know, put aside like reunion shows, like most of those bands are gone.
Yeah.
These guys have just been going and going and going. It's just amazing. And they're a little Sacto band, dude. That's what's so awesome.
And it's really, yeah, the Sacto part, the small town band, which again, that too, I feel like I want to ask you more about, because how in this weird right-wing town do all of these really uh colorful people playing colorful music come about? Like that's a phenomenal thing. But you know what just occurred to me too is that everybody sort of defines Deftones making that left turn or deciding not to keep doing what everybody else was doing as a conscious decision to go left. But it was probably more a conscious decision just to stay authentic, right? Like it wasn't so much a thing like, we don't want to do what they're doing. It's we want to do what we're doing.
I think so. Yeah, I think that's mostly correct. I mean, look, Chino and Steph and Abe and, maybe even Chi a little bit back when he was here, but like, those dudes were certainly like very conscious of what they're doing. They're always like good studies of what's happening in the business and the industry and other bands and artists and stuff. But yeah, it was never like I don't think, at least I don't think there was ever this calculated like, okay, we're going to be this or we're going to do this. It was always a call to just who they are and what they thought was good, which is, I was listening to, Rick Rubin's doing a ton of like, he's like doing his life story now, right? And all these TikToks and all this shit. And he just said someone sent me one the other day and I was listening to it and he's like, and this is how we always thought. This is why I think the Sacramento scene and the Seattle scene were both very vibrant scenes out of all the 18,000 cities in America. Is that we just made stuff that we thought was cool. And Rick Rubin actually was saying that the other day. He was just like, look, if you want to create something, you create something that is for you, that you think you like. And you may make money off it or you may not. And if you don't, keep making it and go get a side job or go get a day job and keep doing it. And if you do, then great, you get to do that. And that's how we all function. That's why there was such a really unique scene here, from like the acoustic side of Cake to like the heavy Pantera riffs of Deftones. to the weird music of Phallucy to like the screamo of Willhaven, right? And everything in between. Like people here just made the music that they wanted to make.
So cool. That's so fun. When did you start to realize like, oh, wow, they're taking off. This is happening for them.
Yeah, I think it was they were signed, but they were still doing clubs. They did clubs for a while, even when they were first signed. Um, but I think I mean, there was a couple times actually. There was a couple times. One was I saw Abe and Steph riding bikes midtown. We were all cruising around, so I was like, "What's up?" And I hadn't seen him in a year or two, and it was just like I was like, they were like, "Yeah, we just got back playing with some band or Kiss or something." I can't remember who somebody bit, and I was like, "Whoa, this is a trip! Like they're not the same as everybody else." You know what I mean? And it was like awesome, but I was like, oh, so it was like kind of first realization. And then I remember I was down, I went and visited them on some studio they were recording in or something. And they were like in the recording studio, runners are getting them food and like they're looking at their next video. And I'm like, oh, this shit is real. This is happening. And this is a long time. That was a long, long time ago.
Yeah.
I was like, whoa, this is fucking sick. Like this is going down. And then, the rest is history.
Wow. That's so cool. And it's so cool that you at the starting point got to stay along for the ride just through the friendship from that initial, the embryo stage in Sac all the way to like it's to now. That's so I feel like that is unique. And I remember in my conversation with Todd, him saying like, is it so weird that you know somebody for 30 years or whatever and they just so happen to be rock stars? I was like, well, the rock star part is pretty weird, but the 30-year part still is pretty fucking special. Like
Yeah.
I don't feel like I don't know. I have 4 or 5 friends, that I've been close with for that long. And we're
Right.
talking about really like you guys created a community. And because I feel like of some of the success that Deftones have achieved, and probably some of yours on the business side that, aren't so publicly well known, you guys continue to carry these relationships forward. Like and it comes from this music scene. Like that's just so rad. Like that's just so,
Yeah, it's
so cool.
crazy. And it's funny when we're together, um, I just went to what'd you call it? Tonacella. And
Conchella,
it was cool. It was cool.
yeah.
I got to see the whole posse because I see Abe all the time and occasionally Chino, but it was good to hang out with the machine and the org. Um, but I don't know, it's weird because I think we grew up together. To me, it's hard to wrap my head around just how massive they are. I have to remind myself, like, my goodness, you guys are just incredibly global. And it's just such a special thing. But, it's the friendship is just natural. It's very, very natural.
Do you have a favorite Deftones song?
Um, I do. I like the Cavalera, dude. It had a
Yeah.
I mean, I again, it's like you can't do a favorite, but like that is like my go-to, bro. I'll put that on like before snowboarding or if I need to, pump it. Like that song when that kicks in, it's just rips.
That
That,
rules.
but that is not my favorite song. That's like my personal favorite. Abe knows my favorite song. My favorite song is Gauze.
Really?
Fucking love Gauze, dude. I've listened to that song. Like Abe hates when I play Deftones in front of him to the point where he's finally like, okay, put Gauze on. I fucking love that song. Love Gauze.
Word.
Number one favorite Deftones song.
Oh, that rules.
But
Oh,
Head Up
that's
is probably my
amazing.
right behind it.
That's so cool. I love that he hates that you play it in front of him. I love that you play it in front of him, first of all, because I'm
Oh yeah,
sure he doesn't
my
like,
mix.
yeah, but that's so fun. That's so cool. Wow.
Yeah, brother.
And and now you are a parent to a musician
Yes.
and and you're seeing all of this play out all over again in some way, I would imagine. Yeah, it's probably what is this like, Destroy Boys? First of all, my introduction to Destroy Boys was Deftones being at Dia. Like for them to be at Dia, I was like, who is this band? Oh, wow, this is cool. And then eventually later I put it together. I was like, wait a minute, that name looks familiar. That was so cool.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, so your Violet is fronting this amazing band. Like
Yeah,
they're really plainly just great.
they are. They're so good. Yeah, God, so much I could say right here. It is really incredible to see it. And yeah, Deftones and especially Uncle Abe, Godfather Abe, Abe's Violet's godfather, um, have been so supportive of the kids in a very, very healthy way. You know, they don't hook them up with anything out of inappropriate. Like they're just like, you guys got to do the work, but like they put them on Dia and Abe's played with them a couple shows, which is just so killer. And and I know like it's kind of funny to watch Violet, my daughter, who's guitarist, main guitarist there. Like it's kind of funny. She discovered Deftones on her own, by the way.
Oh,
Like it wasn't
word?
like I was like, hey, I mean, she knew Abe just growing up. She didn't even really know totally what he did. She's like, oh yeah, I know he plays drums maybe or whatever. This is, because he's known her his whole life, her whole life. And and then, she finally got into music and guitar in like, high school, middle school, high school, whatever. And then it was funny. I remember the day when all of a sudden I walked in her room and she's like playing every single Deftones song on guitar. When you're a kid, you learn every song. And it
Wow.
happened very naturally. It's kind of cool. And what's funny is now I see it come out, and me and Abe call it like the Sacto River. There's this sac, kind of like how Seattle has a sound. Like Sacto has this like groove. We think it's because the rivers here. Like it's just like, and Deftones has a lot of it, dude. It's that kind of groove. Tesla has a lot of it, this river groove. And Destroy Boys are using it a little bit, like in Gold Medal and a few of their songs. But yeah, dude, it's phenomenal to watch it go down. Like it's the same thing. Like Violet and Alexia became friends in high school and they started this band. I mean, the band was one acoustic guitar and a singer, and they played their first show in a cafe.
Wow.
Just like we played our first show in a party in Deftones. I think probably played a house party or some weird little first show. You play and it was just Violet and Alexia playing this like little cafe to, I don't know, 10 kids or 20 kids. And Violet came to us and said, I don't want to go to college. I want to be in a band. And Mom said, oh, no, no, no. It's hard for women out there. Trust me, it's real. You're going to
Word.
college. And I said, you don't want to go to college. You should drop out of high school. That's what I said. That's a dad response, mom's response, and dad's response, right?
Word.
I was dead serious. I was like, if you know what you want to do, drop out of high school and start pursuing it right now. Like,
Word.
anyway, she ends up finishing high school, but then her and Alexia moved to the Bay Area and they just like started getting into it, man. And they just did it on their own. And now they're just this force. It's just incredible to watch. And it's joyous. And I just went, this was a cool pinnacle moment. They just played, this must have been 3 months ago, 3 months ago. They played they started a festival called Destroy Fest, just like,
Awesome.
like Dia de los Deftones, like every band. So, and it's I think second or third year, or maybe it's second year. And, they have all these bands, all these artists, and then they play. And dude, they just had it and it sold out the old original Glam Slam Prince's Club in downtown LA,
Wow.
which is now called the Bellwether. But it's the old Glam Slam, and they headlined it. And to go there and see them, think of them in that cafe with like a guitar and these two, little chubby cheek kids playing this, crazy alternative folk, riot folk or whatever, to now headlining Glam Slam in downtown LA, packed and sold out, was just like, what?
Wow.
Yeah, it's
That's
phenomenal,
so
man.
cool. Dude, that's really, if I may, as a young dad, or at least my father of young kids, my daughters are 7 and 4. Um,
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yes, I'm exhausted. You can see the dark circles around the head.
Hey, man, don't look at my hair color, bro.
Hey, at least you
For those
got
of
it.
you listening, it's
Yeah,
dark black. It's
yeah.
dark black, everyone listening,
It's jet
and
black.
long and very long.
It's that rules. Yeah. That's bold. to be like, yeah, like go, but you mean that, huh? Like I could tell you meant it. Like, yeah,
I was
like,
dead serious.
yeah,
Dead serious. Like it's a different era and it's a different world. Like, you know, you can teach yourself to be a pretty much almost a medical surgery doctor on YouTube
word.
and, and Mayo Clinic and et cetera. Right now, you're not going to operate on people, but you get what I'm saying. Like, if you know what you want to do and you're 16 years old, then go pursue it. Now, I did explain the other side of it. I'm like, if you think you know what you want to do and you end up not doing the work and don't pursue it and you pass on this college thing, it's going to be a different path. It's going to be a little different. It's going to be harder. That's okay. Just know that's a consequence. But if you do the work, entertainment's a young person's game. Like go hit it, go get it.
Yeah.
And so she did, I mean, she did a little tiny bit of college, but like, you know, that was kind of to appease mom. And then and she's like, I'm telling you guys, and I got mom on board. I'm like, let her just go, and she just those kids do the work. They remind me of Deftones. Like Deftones worked. Like they screwed off a lot, but they worked. They worked hard. They were a hardworking band, playing the shows, getting the manager, making sure to get the sponsorships and the right shows. And they did the work, dude. And yeah, they're talented. Yes, they stayed together, a lot of things, but a lot of bands do that. It's the work ethic, man. And they have it to this day. Like crazy work. They probably have a better work ethic now than they used to, funny enough. Because no one, really thought you always dreamed of being big, but then you're like, well, are we really, like let's just have fun. But it's like Destroy Boys, these kids work harder than anybody. And it shows. Like I've showed my music industry friends, and they're an indie artist, right? And they're just like, whoa, what are these numbers? Those are all organic. Like they're like, they have more numbers than our major label bands. I'm like, yeah, all organic. That's them doing the work. It's hard work. And so, yeah, it's pretty neat to see.
Because a lot of these other, well, I know at least to some degree that, bands get picked up by a label, they get shopped, they get worked, and they haven't always done the work. Maybe they had a YouTube video or whatever the case may be. And I really appreciate the likening that to Deftones because I feel like the perception at large is that they had spent most of their time goofing off, partying, having fun, and then they'd go in and jam and then make these songs. But you point to the shows that they played,
Oh,
and you,
dude. Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, all young bands party and have fun, right? Then they probably did more than their fair share. Let's say that maybe. But I'm telling you, these guys worked hard, practiced all the time, did shows like they went and did the circuit. And yeah, they had a lot of good luck too, but that you make that luck by creating opportunity with the hard work. And then, the part that I don't think people see is, fuck man, there was like, I don't know, like 4 or 5 years, like I didn't even see Abe. Like they did every opening tour. And this is great. Like, people on the outside think, oh, that's what a great life. You get to go on tour with Kiss or Pantera or Ozzy or whoever, but it's a grind. It's hard, dude. It's not easy
yeah,
and not as easy as people think. And so, they weren't always like this big. I mean, they didn't really have radio singles. They were trendy. They were part of that movement of that kind of like, groovy rap rock, whatever. But they were their own thing. So that always meant they had to work a little harder because they didn't have the like Limp Bizkit hit or that whatever hit, And so I saw them like go through those times, like sacrifice family holidays, go on those tours, like grind it out, dude. Put out another record. Like that's a lot of work, man. I mean, it's a
yeah.
lot. Not
And in
easy.
the end, I feel like it has ultimately um as much as I feel like it's a little bit of a capitalist propaganda to say, hard work pays, but it's in their case, it really does. It's evident because of all of the extra work that they seem to have had to put in over the years. They have elevated themselves at to the same height of all of those peers that may have had hits that
That's right.
superseded their own. Like,
Well, look,
and
there's
they're still together. Like,
and they're
you
still
know what I mean?
together.
It's still the
There's a lot, and they've
core.
survived like deaths, divorces, drugs, right?
Right.
All of
Right.
it, right? So that's a testament of conviction and commitment that I was talking about earlier. But the thing is what it's probably a lot like, I don't know a ton about actors, but I guarantee you can go read about, oh, Jim Carrey was discovered by this one thing. Yeah, that's true. But what people don't see are the endless hours of looking in the mirror and making faces, singing, dancing, lessons, rehearsals, tryouts, getting told no 1 million times. Yes, it was fun going in the RV with Deftones when they were touring with Korn. I went for a week or two with them and like, yeah, fun. But it's like, dude, you got six guys in an RV and they're farting and pooping
Yeah,
and you can smell
probably
the
don't smell good.
yeah, and like just and it's again, it's fun. You're 19, 20 years old. It's a blast. But that then it goes on again and again and
Mm.
again and again. And it takes that's the stuff people don't see. That's the hard work. That's the work.
Yeah.
It's honing that and like practicing and working on your equipment and getting the sound right and writing the songs and then going in the studio and having the determination to write another record when you're like, oh, I'm a rock star. I could just screw off. And like
Yeah.
they did it, man. And yeah, you're right. It's very evident.
And to that point, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about maybe some of the creative things that Deftones' success and your music community afforded, namely Team Sleep, which is super special to me. And you wrote and played on Boulevard, correct? That's you playing
Wrote
the.
wrote might make Todd's head explode, but I played on it for sure. Yeah, but I appreciate the credit. I mean, throw it on there.
Dude, I love Team Sleep. I was wearing my new Team Sleep shirt earlier, and I was sweating through it because I was working around the house, so I had to change shirts. But that project is so special to me. It's a treat to get to talk to you about it. I mean, whether your contribution gets changed live every time they pulled it out or not, yours, it's on the record and it's there forever.
Yeah.
And it's really cool. And you did get to sort of go and, make music with friends. That's
Yeah, it was cool. I was really freaking crazy ecstatic and honored that Chino asked me to. He said, "Hey, I'm putting together this new project. It's gonna be a little trippy, and I think you'd fit in it." I was like, "Yes, I'm psyched. Finally, yay!" Um, I forgot. I just remember I actually did a Deftones song too. Frank Sinatra, the Beast, I think, or one of the.
oh, word
Yeah, that's right. We did a couple. We could. Yeah, I forgot about that. That was at the dark times, the crazy times. Yeah, I played on a Deftones like some weird
on Sinatra. I'm gonna have to look that up for
Sinatra. Yeah,
sure.
I think it
Yeah,
was.
yeah.
I think so. I know I was there. Whether I played, I know I played. Whether it made it or not, maybe it didn't make the mix, but whatever. Sorry, that memory just came to me. But yeah, on Team Sleep was really cool. Like we actually worked on that. Chino had a really clear vision with Todd of what they wanted to build, and Crook too, and it was just really really cool. And then Zach on drums, just really crazy cool. And so yeah, that was really really a neat experience, and I was lucky to do it, man. I got to play with him in the spot and work on some tunes, and then we did that recording. I think I made one song, which was great. I think I played on two or three, and then we did a Phallucy Team Sleep tour. That was a reunion tour. So Phallucy and Team Sleep did a tour together.
That's
Yeah, we
right.
did like 12 or 13 shows, which was pretty cool. That was really neat. And playing like theaters. And it was, obviously it was Abe and Deftones, Chino and Team Sleep. So, and then I would sit in with Team Sleep for a couple songs. And it was mostly Deftones fans coming out, but they were getting exposed to these other projects. It was very, very cool. And then but the coolest part for me on Team Sleep was they asked me to join them. They were playing like a Grammys show where Metallica was being honored. Like this, it was like a sandwich, not the Grammys, but a Grammys like side thing or whatever.
Yeah.
And dude, and, I'm a huge Metallica fan, and so um, we Chino came with this idea to do this sort of medley, and it opened with this obscure track off Injustice, the instrumental that Cliff wrote, and Chino kind of deconstructed it and we put it together, but it opened with that acoustic part, and which I got to play, but it's like sitting 10 feet away was freaking Kirk Hammett, dude. And then I had to do the solo as well. And it was funny because, I just probably like seared the solo like overcooked steak. But I
I'm
got
sure
it.
you're
I
your
did
own
it.
worst
I
critic.
ripped
Yeah.
it. And like, yeah, I went up to Kirk and I'm like, hey man. He's like, wow, you were really feeling it. Which was like, I think his way of like, it was okay. It was amazing, dude. It was amazing. And so
Gosh,
yeah,
that's
Team
so
Sleep's a
cool.
really special project, and I was stoked to be a part of it. And it's just cool to see how far that music's gone.
Yeah. Yeah. I was
And
really,
another,
really
actually, I should say this, another example of
pleased.
like Chino, I'll say really, I mean, all talented guys, but like using his platform and his fame to like, expose that stuff, like with Crook and Todd and, I mean, all those guys already had other things going on, but with Chino singing on that, it helped expose it to a lot more people. Really cool.
Yeah. I think that again, it's just one of the things that makes the community, that Sacramento music community that you guys were at the
Hmm.
forefront of, that just it's so singular. It's just so special. And it's a delight to get to talk to you about him, about that whole time. And I really appreciate it. And I think this is probably a great segue to my closing question.
Mm.
I close every episode with a request for recommendations. And this is because of something Chino said on a podcast once. Although he doesn't tweet out YouTube links anymore, at least maybe I'm not on X or Twitter so often, so I
Know
don't
where
see it.
you're going.
But
Yeah.
he said he used to tweet out links to music because he felt like that was the best thing that he could share on social media. So, in that spirit, would you recommend three things to me? And it could be music, it could be art, it could be literature, it could be anything in the world that you feel like people should spend a little time with.
Definitely. That's so funny. I'm just pulling up my playlist. I remember that. And I started paying attention and I got Ink from Chino, Heart Crimes and Swear.
Word?
Oh, these songs are like they're on my permanent, like I have a playlist called Poolside. That's like the pinnacle playlist, Poolside.
Yeah.
So I remember him doing that, dude. And I wish he would do that more. Cause yeah, he's always like on the forefront. Oh, and check it out. There's Gauze right there, motherfucker.
God, I
Um,
love that song. That's so great. I love that that's your favorite song. That rules.
three recommendations. Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna say, God, this song is probably gonna be, I guess to me, songs are never over. But I'm gonna say there's a song called Tech It by Kafune. Have you heard it?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. So just so you know, like everyone has their things they like, and I love like it's funny because I do love like Metallica and Slayer and Megadeth and things like that. And I grew up playing really gnarly Death Angel rock and all that, but I love pop. Now, not your pop like you might be thinking. I love pop songs. I don't typically get off on like chart topping pop, just not what I'm into. I try to, but I don't. But I'll give you three recommendations. So one is this song is called Tech It, Tekit by Kafune, Cafune.
All
And
right.
it's just a very like catchy. It's so catchy as a matter of fact. And anybody listening to the pod, DM me if you know this to be true. And Kafune, if I'm offending you right now, please don't hold this against me. It is so good. It makes me wonder if they utilized AI. I really mean that because
Really?
I'm a big fan of AI and I don't fear AI helping songwriters and music. So I say use it. I'm not saying AI wrote the song, don't get me wrong, but I'm almost wondering like, holy smokes, did you guys like use AI plus your own talent and like create these incredible melodies? Just my subjective opinion and perspective. Okay.
That's cool. So it must be a relatively new song then.
I think it might be, and I think it might
Yeah.
be. again, Kafune, if you're listening, don't be offended by this. Maybe, I don't know if they're like a TikTok fame band or something like that, but I don't know. But I
That's
love that
dope.
song. I came across it and I freaking love that song, dude. It's
Excellent.
really, it's cool. Um, let's see, another recommendation. So I'm gonna stick with the Sacto theme since we're talking Deftones. And I'm gonna recommend you go to YouTube. You can only get this audio via a YouTube link, and it's Mark Curry. And Mark Curry, if you heard of Mark Curry, so he was like pre-Phallucy, post-Tesla era of Sacramento music scene,
All right.
signed to Virgin Records. And one of all of us, Deftones included, like most admired artists of ever come out of Sacramento. This guy is like our Johnny Cash meets John Lennon. I really mean that. This dude's song, like El Jefe, his guitarist, is in NoFX.
Oh, word.
So that he was part of Mark's band, original.
Wow.
Mark got signed to Virgin. He was one of the very first artists here in Sac in our era to be signed to a major label. It was big news, big deal. And but he had like a punk rock ethic, dude, like Kurt Cobain, like the story of Kurt throwing up on the president of Geffen or whatever label he's on. Like Mark was like that, dude. He was crazy, just crazy. I think he did 2 records with them and got dropped and ended up just still making music, still makes music to this day. So there's a video called Mark Curry at Cafe Audrey, Hollywood CA 3.
All right.
So that's a
Cool.
weird, yes. You'll have to look this up in the editing. Mark Curry at Cafe Audrey. You'll find a bunch of them. Some weird fan posted them. This is very, very obscure. And it's this like heart-wrenching song that will, if you have a glass of wine or two and then listen to it, it's going to like, make you commit. What is that when you stab yourself in the stomach in Japanese? You know what I mean?
Seppuku.
So thank you.
Seppuku.
Seppuku.
Seppuku. Yeah.
Yes, it's literally going to do that to you, bro.
Oh,
So check
awesome.
that out. And then my third, I'm gonna give you a tie for my third recommendation. So I'm technically going four,
Great.
but I'm gonna do a 3A and a 3B since we're rock and rollers who can break the rules.
Yeah.
My 3A is Perplexity. Have you used Perplexity?
No.
Okay, it's amazing. It's an AI, basically, a lot of people are calling it the Google killer, and everyone's been saying that forever, and there's never been true. This one, very possible. It's
Word.
essentially functions like a search engine or like a GPT, but it gives you results that look a lot like a Google search engine, but the results are phenomenal. So it's perplexity.ai, I think. So try Perplexity. Just, I know if you're doing a podcast, you're doing research and you're doing things.
Totally. Yeah.
So check that out. And then that's my 3A. And then my 3B is there's an amazing pod that I guess a vlog or podcast or whatever that I want to give you the specific episode. Here it is. Let me just tell it.
Supplement.
Oops, sorry. Oh yeah, right here. Here it is. Okay, so it's what you'll look up is on YouTube or YouTube podcast is Huberman Labs. Huberman Lab. Have you heard of it?
No.
Okay, so I'm 4 for 4 that you haven't heard of?
Yeah. No, this is great. Yeah. It's fantastic.
Okay, Huberman Lab. And the episode is, how do I get back here? Okay, you'll find it. His name is Dr. Huberman. And it's the episode Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, Lyon. How do I slide that over? It's the Dr. Gabrielle Lyon episode. It's like 2.5 hours. It's long. But as I'm telling you that because I personally, just at my stage of life and my age, I'm now getting into, we've all ridden the horse pretty hard. Now I'm getting really into health and wellness and like starting to think a little bit more about longevity. And, I'm still with my wife who I married in 1996, which is pretty rare. And we're best friends still. And I, have 2 kids. And so I'm like, okay, let's feel good and let's get up and hard charge it every day. So I've been consuming this really cool stuff. And you're a young dad. So, you want to be around for your kid to make the next Destroy Boys and or whatever, she does or he does and all that good stuff. And so that episode specifically, I really like because it talks a lot about muscular synthesis, proteins, and other really amazing things that will enlighten you around health and wellness and taking care of yourself.
That's great. That's fantastic. I was really when we found out that my wife was pregnant with our first daughter, I quit smoking 6 months before she was born and totally like dove into health and wellness. And then the pandemic just like shut me down, and it's been really, really, really challenging to get myself to stay consistent, to just recommit.
Okay, pause right there. So I'm going to give you a 3B or my fifth one, or 3C.
Yeah.
3C. So first off, you're not alone in that. Everybody, we all went. I think I was like weighing in at like 210, 215 during the pandemic. It was just like nuts, and taking beer every day.
Still here.
Yeah, no, super
Still
guilty,
here.
super guilty. But and look, it all comes in balance, right? Like, it's not like you need to go flip-flop or whatever. But there's a great book called Atomic Habits. Have you read it?
No.
Okay, great. So get it. If you want, I'll buy it for you and send it to you. Just send me your info. But it's about stacking. So you said something interesting. You stopped your smoking and this and that, and then the pandemic. And what happens is when people make big lifestyle changes kind of all at once, like you have a kid coming, so I'm going to stop all these crazy things. I'm going to eat better. I'm going to stop smoking. I'm going to exercise. I'm going to sleep more, right? 4 different things. What you don't know psychologically is one of those is the foundation for all of them. So whichever one it was stopped during the pandemic, and then all of it came crumbling down.
Mm-hmm.
And when you create atomic habits, what do you think of when you think of atoms? You think small, right? Atoms are small, right? You can't see them. They're little. That's what atomic habits is about. It's about like, okay, how do I make these small changes? And how can I start to layer some in slowly so I can it's kind of like we were talking about with Deftones doing the work, right? Like, oh, they're just a big band. Well, no. Oh, they got signed by Madonna, so they're big. No. It was that show at the Cactus. Then it was the show at Cal. Then they went and did their first tour. Then it was the second tour. Then it was the fucking 37th tour, right? I mean, it's small atomic things that all stack and then, turn into something that's habitual. So that might be good for you. Check that out.
That is Sonny Mayugba. Thank you, Sonny. It's tremendously cool hearing your story, learning about Phallucy and the Phallus Palace, and thinking about Deftones from your point of view. It's a tremendous gift to this podcast, and I am extremely grateful. Thank you. My name is Robert Nelson. My friends call me Woody. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter. I'm at Woodbruh, WOODBRUH, if you want to talk about my favorite band. Hit me up. Thank you for listening to Deftones, and thank you for listening to Change in the House of Pods.